So like with humor, jokes, and stand-up and shit, right? So it's like I haven't done stand-up in a minute, but I still keep up with it. And so, stand-up right now is a space where there's a lot of, talk where like, not only is it the most pervasive and big as it's ever been, it's so readily available, but then also so many more people are trying to do stand-up, and so many other groups and identities are starting to get in the conversation. And so like I remember earlier in there, we were talking more so on the side of like, oh well, as an artist, I want to be able to say whatever I want and pushing those boundaries and stuff. And then we've come later into this other element of talking about, well, there still has to be a line because there are certain things that are, because like everything, it does change. And so to talk about like what I was saying earlier, I wanted to double back to criticism and whatnot, and how criticism is just as much of an art as like music or literature and shit, is Ricky Gervais recently was the host at the Golden Globes, right? Now, for those that don't know, Ricky Gervais, he's an English comedian. He's been around for quite a minute. He's responsible for The Office, and he's a well-known, UK, excuse me. He's also a New Age atheist. He's a New Age atheist and speaks very, a lot about that as well. And his stand-up, is known to be quote-unquote edgy and critical of, it used to be critical of the status quo. Now he's kind of taken in the last few years, he seems to be taking a reactionary turn or expressing reactionary ideas. Because at the Golden Globes, he repeated something that is a common trope among conservatives, young and old, which is celebrities, nobody cares what you have to say, shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? That was basically the ethos of his hosting and shit. And of course the right wing all of a sudden is loving him, just like they loved Dave Chappelle when he started talking about the trans issues in a way that trans people didn't really like. And it's like, the way I fall on this issue is that it's clear to me that once again, like I said, just because somebody can be very good on these issues, they can still be terrible on these other ones. And it's all about what the climate is and what they happen to be feeding into. So like with somebody like Dave Chappelle, he's somebody who has a very, very nuanced, clear understanding of the black experience. But when he starts talking about women or LGBT folks and shit, it's like his way of understanding it is strictly from the status quo, and he doesn't really offer legitimacy to their experiences or talking about it from their perspective. You know what I'm saying? And so when we talk about like, oh, why are you getting on me? It's just a joke. It's just funny. Why are people criticizing me? It's like, well, first of all, if you're not gonna fucking want to be criticized, stop being such a fucking pussy and shut the hell up and go live in a hole. Because like your freedom of speech, everybody has a fucking right to speak, and that's not because of what's written in the Constitution or because I earned the right to. It's because I have a voice. That is my right to speak. I can think. That is my right to do so. You know what I'm saying? Right there. And so the thing about talking about people or making jokes or comments about people of a group that you don't belong to or that you don't identifying with is that it's showing that your mindset is incorporating the arguments that they would make, or that when you talk, you know what I'm saying, at some point you're repeating something that was told to you by that person. And when you listen to somebody, when I hear some of these comedians, whom are quote unquote getting canceled, like Louis C.K. or Dave Chappelle or Ricky Gervais and shit, and it's like, well, they come back and they make more money than they've ever made before. You know what I'm saying? They get more opportunities before, and it's because they're catering to the status quo, because the status quo is already there to dismiss these perspectives. And so when it comes down to like, cancel culture and criticism and shit, first of all, cancel culture isn't real, unfortunately. Or cancel culture is real, but the people who get canceled are not the ones that we usually think.
Can I ask what cancel culture is? I honestly don't. I don't know what cancel culture is.
Cancel culture is basically, it's just a new term. It's really just a derogatory term for something that's been around forever, which is setting your sights, saying that, this person violated some norms or whatever, and we're going to isolate them or
like boycott them?
Like boycott them or try to get them fired. Blacklist them and shit. Except it's just like done publicly.
Social media.
Through social media and shit. The problem is,
that's mostly like, I don't mean whoever I'm gonna offend, I don't give a fuck. It's mostly like the sheep, the ones that are like, like you said, like they're idolizing this person, and it's like, they don't do what would like, I don't like what they said, so I'm just gonna stop. It's like, yeah, that happens. Like even with businesses, if you don't like a business, you have the right, you have the right to not go to that business, you know. But the whole, I don't know, cancel culture is kind of, it just sounds to me like if you don't like what I have to say, you don't gotta follow me, you know.
But here's the huge caveat, but here's the huge caveat. So y'all were just talking about colorism and the priority of fair-skinned people. You know what I'm saying? White, the dominance of white beauty standards and white ethnicity and shit. Well, the thing is, what does white society tell us when we say we want more representation of people of color, or we want more representation of Muslims? Why don't you go make your own platform? Why do we have to invite you in here? Why are you trying to force diversity on us? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, to talk about cancel culture is that, like I said, it's just a derogatory term, a modern term for something that's been around forever. When the Catholic Church didn't like the findings of scientists and researchers and shit, they canceled them. When governments find out about dissident movements and shit that want to overthrow them and shit, they cancel them. When conservatives and shit, people talk about like, oh, conservatives can't even go on campuses and shit. Most people who get censored and get their rights violated and shit are people who identify as left-wing or liberal and shit. They're getting canceled. This whole, like, talking about cancel culture and shit is actually a reactionary, like a right-wing reaction to people like the LGBT community speaking up more, the black community speaking up more, women speaking up more and shit like that, or femme-identifying people and shit like that. And so that's why it's like, that's why when I talk about the gray and shit, it's not just as simple as, this isn't a case of just simple hero worship or just simple, you know, people just being outraged. It's like, no, you claiming that you're doing humor when you're just undermining an experience. Like there's the popular joke, a right-wing joke about the transgender community where they say, oh, you were born as a man, but you identify as a woman? Well, I identify as an attack helicopter. And it's like, exactly. But the thing is, they laugh at it and it's like, I can't convince them that it's not funny, but the thing is, just like with satire earlier with Starship Troopers, it reveals something about you. That's the deeper thing about humor and comedy, is that it's not a joke, is not just a joke. When you laugh at a joke and all of it is just somebody repeating a slur or a stereotype about a group of people and shit, what you're finding humor in is the existence. What you're finding humor in is the existence of this person and looking at them in this framework. You're laughing because it's reinforcing your framework. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can't help but to want to like be the devil's advocate again and be like,
oh, we need that. Oh.
Yeah, and be like, okay, well, let's say like I'm a comedian, right, and I'm like, super famous, but it's like I have like these networks and like these guidelines that I have to adhere to and like answer to. So it's like you can say something, but you can't really say it. It's just like I don't know. So I'm like, maybe
you can say whatever you want, but there are consequences, and that's what people are, and that's what they're complaining about.
Yeah,
really.
and I agree that they shouldn't complain about the criticism. I completely agree.
No, they should complain. That's not my argument. I'm saying basically my side is everybody should be speaking up for themselves. But the problem is that the status quo is. And this is the problem with the whole both sides have a point or both sides are equal and shit. It's like, no, not all sides have equal value. The status quo has an advantage over the marginalized ones. So you can't sit, so it's like, yeah, I want everybody to voice their opinion and voice their criticisms and shit. But a lot of people conflate them as being like, oh, you're just complaining because you're this. And it's like, no, there's a different weight here. And that's what I'm trying to allude to, is that you'll have comedians, once again, who are able to talk very good about something related to their identity and their experiences and shit, but when they talk about somebody else, they just reinforce the status quo about them, and then they get pushback. And I feel like people should defend themselves, be able to defend themselves and shit, but it's recognizing that people are just, a lot of them are basically just saying, we don't want to deal with consequences of speech. We want the material benefit of making money from this. We want the benefit of being famous. We want the benefit of building up this network and this protection, but we don't want to listen to criticism and have to change the discomfort of having to incorporate different opinions and accept that we're wrong and shit. That's what's happening, but the thing is that it's not equal. The playing field isn't equal. But when people go out and say, "Oh, both sides have a point," or this, of course, this side's going to complain. It's like, no, dig a little deeper into where the complaint is coming from. You know, and it's not because like anybody can say whatever they want, but you may have to deal with consequences. And part of So a lot of these comedians and shit. Well, actually, go ahead and finish your point. I'll go back.
Yeah, my only point was that I can't help but think that perhaps some of these comments and some of these jokes are almost made to like, did you see what you just laughed at? Like, you're so stupid. But it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm saying this, but I don't really mean it. It's like, oh, this is racist. You're laughing. You're dumb.
You
know what I mean? Like, but they don't say that. It's almost like
trap comedy.
it's almost like, yeah, like grow enough so I can, like, you know, like when a root grows like above like flowers, and it's like you can see it now, and it's like visible. So it's
True
like
colors kind of.
yeah, you know what I mean? And it's just like I can't help but to think that I'm not saying all of the comedians or all of like the people that create this type of art, but it's like perhaps, you know, there are some with that intention, you know, where it's like you're not luring them, but almost making them think that you're one of them. But it's like, oh, like.
Didn't it happen again? Just to bring back, I know.
That was-
I love Dave Chappelle. I'm just saying, I love Dave Chappelle because, like, of course, I don't know. Because to me, like I said, like different people see his jokes differently. Like to me, like she said, when he says it, kind of like when he was doing the Chappelle show, he didn't like that because he didn't want to keep doing black jokes because they were making money off of that. He's like, no, I'm more than black jokes, you know. He's like, I'm more than that, you know. That's why he stopped doing it, and that's why he left. From what I read,
Specifically, it was because he said that he didn't like the fact that he wasn't sure about the reaction of non-black audiences to the black jokes. He's like, wait, are you laughing because you find the humor in the humanity of what I'm talking about, or are you laughing because of because I'm making a spectacle of the performative if I'm doing a performative element of the black experience for your entertainment.
Like, do you get it, or you're just laughing at like a black
just to
person?
laugh at it.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like his new special, he talked about trans. Like I have trans family. I have nothing against it. But like she said, like they bring things up just to like basically bring out all the assholes. You get me? Like it's kind of like weeding out the assholes. It's like, yeah, that's why I love telling people, you can talk shit about me all you want, because then I know that I'm not gonna fuck with you. You know? Like I don't agree with your shit, so I know now I'm not gonna fuck with you. You know? Like not in a sense that I'm not gonna respect you, but I now know that how to, you know, like be around you. You know? Like, and I don't know, just the things he says, I feel like he says it like that. It's like, oh, look what you're laughing at. You know, you're laughing at stereotypes, and it's like, cause I don't know. That's the way I see it though, cause like I love comedy, and I love seeing like the other meaning behind it, not just someone being an asshole. You know.
Yeah. Well, here's the caveat. So here's the thing about that is that once again, like to let's use a different
Medium.
artist or medium or something. Or actually, let's talk about it more generally. It's the thing I've come to conclusion with. It's once again, when you talk about another group or something that you don't identify with, are your comments, are they
That's true, because where do they come from?
Yeah.
well, the thing is like your comments, your observations, are they just something that reinforces what's already been established or thought about this particular group, or is it something that's incorporating new thoughts and different ways of thinking about it? And the thing you'll notice about a lot of these people who will complain about criticism is that they're just feeding into the status quo. They're not actually trying to make the group in question seem more human. They're just using them as the spectacle. And so I think that there's a lot of people who make the criticism who aren't being so they're not being as clear and concise with it. I think a lot of times, you know, because people are so viscerally attached to stuff, and because a lot of times people's lives are dependent, because a lot of people's lives are affected by this shit, that, you know, you go into you're just hateful, you're just bigoted and stuff, which it's like that may or may not be true, and that's not the best reaction. Now, when you get deal with somebody like me, I'm a bit more surgical. And so I'm gonna try to like unearth and be like, okay, understand really where your frame of thought is coming from. And so it's like, you know, when I talk to other black people and stuff about like LGBT stuff or being a non-believer and shit, it's like there's a lot of pushback towards those things. And I just, you know, I try to explain to them like, don't you just realize that you are just feeding into the status quo? It's like you put so much of your identity into the black part and making that individualizing that, but then for everything else, it's just going along with the status quo. And so it's like when I hear like, you know, listening to these new artist specials and new films or stuff, or even Stephen King just had a mild controversy because he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said that I would never, like, I don't care about diversity or something related to diversity and being just kind of flippant and dismissive about it. And the thing is that, like, people will talk about, you know, forced diversity and shit like that, but they don't want to bring up and then when you bring up the fact that, like, oh, why is this group prioritized and given all the access and shit? Well, then they'll say that's not a demand. I was like, wait a minute, but the original complaint is about people demanding inclusion in this space. It's like, so it's a circular argument. You're not really trying to get to the point that you just don't, the problem, that the existence, it's that you're ignoring, yeah, because you don't want to.
You're not answering the question.
You're not answering the question. You're not answering the question because the actual answer is the existence of this other group of people who's looking for inclusion is what you find problematic. You know what I'm saying? And so to like taper off this whole thing about like criticism and art and shit like that, and like the limitations of being yourself, is that you should constantly be trying to, because starting at a fundamental understanding that you have one tiny sliver of the human experience and shit that you could possibly go through and stuff, that in and of itself should be like, fuck, like before I speak on these other things or, you know, or get so high and mighty about my own opinion and understanding of shit, listen to feedback and listen to other people and shit.
Give people their space.
Give people, pass the mic.
Yeah. No, I agree 1,000%. And I think that's right. Like, we can get so caught up because we read something or we learned this about this. But you're right, you know, especially, again, talking about people who have like these huge platforms. But even in smaller groups, you know, I think it's important to like, to just respect each other's space, you know, and recognize and have that self-awareness in ourselves to be like, you know what, I actually don't know enough about this subject. You know, I feel a certain way about it, but, you know, do you have anything else to say? You know, like, he's right, pass the mic. Know when it's your turn to speak on your own stuff and when it's not. And just because someone's quiet doesn't mean they don't want to talk. So it's like, you know.
Speaking of quiet, but you have been quiet. Do you guys have anything to say?
I'm usually like way louder though, but just, you know, I'll give you guys more, you know, right?
No,
I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom anyway.
Yeah, as long as you're just respecting each other and like, I feel like it's so ridiculous that we're not there. I mean, yeah, some of us are, you know, it's so beautiful that we're all from different cultures and we're here all talking about it, but some places it's like remember we were talking with Jack that like people that live in small towns, like especially like if they live in the mountains or if they live somewhere secluded, they don't know anything else but that.
Yeah,
it's unless you have the people that like go online and they like they're like, I'm gonna escape this. Remember, like, I'm gonna escape this damn town because they're not progressive as like that's why everybody comes to California, everybody goes to New York, Miami, everywhere. Like it's just, I don't know, it's just respect each other, and like but people. That's all they know from their little, like, from the place that they were. So they haven't expanded their intelligence. Is not even in like school wise. It's more like conditioning and their experiences with other people and other cultures. Yeah. It's like you
have no other frame of reference. It's like somebody talking to you about swimming and shit, but you've never been near a body of water. You've never seen any creatures that participate in swimming. So it's like it's not even you being malicious or wanting to ignore it. It's just like, I just literally don't, it just doesn't, I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
It's like I have an example, like with the whole family stuff too, like my grandma, dad, like we lived in South Central. She's from El Salvador. She was pretty old when she came over, but like I remember like I used to watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I used to watch like a lot of shows with like predominantly black, actors and stuff. And she would always be like, "Oh, why are you watching that?" and blah blah. And I always like tell her like, "Oh, I'm gonna marry." like it's just like pissing her off. And I'm like, "Why?" And then as I got older, I started like teaching her more like, "Grandma, like, why are you like that?" But it's like she's only been in a certain place and been treated bad by a certain group of people, and it's like that's all she fucking knows. And she comes from El Salvador. There's not a lot of black people from El Salvador. It's past her. Yeah, exactly. Like it's like that thing, nature versus nurture, and also like your environment and everything, and what you know, and like the education and the stuff you've read, the things that you've learned from outside sources and also stuff that you've taught yourself, it's like, it's really crazy. That's why I don't like judging a lot of people, especially people who are like hateful as fuck. I'm just like, who hurt you, bro? Like, where are you from? Or like, what happened to you in order to like, you know, make you this way? You know?
It's kind of, because you're like, and the thing is like, don't forget that you are playing in a different field than they are. Is that you are, is that even though you know that you're diametrically opposed in perspective and whose opinion should be relevant in the culture and in political power, that they don't share the same view. They still don't want you to exist. They've just taken that hatred and found a way, or excuse me, they've taken those negative experiences, which may be very real. Yeah. Like when people tell me that, like, hey, like, you know, I know this may sound weird to you, but like, I never met a black person who, you know, acts like you or talks like you and shit. And it was like, there was a time in my life when I was younger when I would get like real offended and be like, you know, but I didn't realize that I'm like, okay, they don't know you as an individual. You just, you know, all we see is what we see. And it's like, if most of it's like, we all live in the conviction of our experiences. And so while you may know this one thing, like, oh, I read these studies, or I've seen these videos, or I hear these things, it's like your day-to-day experience is what defines how you feel and how you identify and shit. And so it's like, you still have this strange empathy for people whom you share diametrically opposed views, but you're just like, okay, I can still at least understand how they got, you know what I'm saying, down this path.